here. This is very complex. The labor dynamics, the league dynamics, the billionaire collusion dynamics behind Lamar Jackson's contract negotiations. It's fascinating. It's also really depressing to me that Lamar has not gotten paid yet. Today on his podcast, Adam Schefter, who you have to take everything he says with a grain of salt, especially because he's often a mouthpiece for agents. Like, he will make contracts look way bigger in terms of their overall value than they actually are. Like, for example, Daniel Jones's contract, this was Ian Rappaport who initially reported it, but those guys are interchangeable, right? He said 4 years, $160 million. Big contract for Daniel Jones. The Daniel Jones contract is a 2-year contract, front loaded with guarantees. And it's like around $38 million a year to start off the contract, which is middle tier quarterback market money in this current climate. So again, take these kinds of insiders with a grain of salt. But in this instance here, what Schefter is saying, there's no agent involved with Lamar Jackson. So I'm inclined to believe these numbers are real, especially because this is what we have heard repeatedly, and Lamar Jackson's camp has not been able to really refute it, of what the Ravens offered Lamar Jackson last year. Here's Adam Schefter on his podcast, and based on all of that context, I'm inclined to believe that these are the real numbers.
Because Morton and I reported on this last September when Lamar Jackson was offered a deal that he turned down that included, at the time it was offered, $133 million due at signing. $133 million guaranteed. The contract also had injury guarantees that brought the guarantees up to $175 million. And it then had a springing guarantee that could have brought the value of the contract, the guaranteed money in the contract, to $200 million in guarantees. Those guarantees were way more than Kyler Murray got from Arizona, way more than Russell Wilson got from the Denver Broncos. And yes, those were the actual numbers, and that was the situation. So those really are the guarantees for Lamar Jackson. It also was reported on the injury guarantee, $168 million, but another $7 million was guaranteed that would have come due on the 5th day of 2026, making it $175. So the real guarantees in Lamar's contract were $133 million at signing, $175 with injury, and $200 million on a springing guarantee that would have kicked in if he was still on the roster on the 5th day of the league year in 2026. So maybe it's not a guarantee, but he would have had to been on the roster for 3 more years, and then 25 more million would have become guaranteed to make it $200 million. Bottom line, Lamar Jackson passed up a lot of guaranteed money in the hopes that he would get a fully guaranteed contract. And not to say that some team won't give that to him now.
They won't.
But
yeah. That hurts to hear, because that's generational money for Lamar Jackson, who I want desperately to get paid. One of my favorite players in the league. Great teammate, great guy. But he is doubling down on this no agent thing. And the sticking point, as Schefter kind of said, seems to be that he wants his contract fully guaranteed, which has only really been done one time so far. And that's with Deshaun Watson. And that's because the Browns are idiots. And they were held over a barrel and did a contract that the rest of the league was like, are you kidding me?
Never again.
Never again.
Hashtag never again.
So that's when collusion comes into play here, right? And I saw people were throwing this out there, and I'm inclined to agree with it as a concept of collusion against Lamar Jackson. But then at the same time, the rest of all these NFL insiders and personalities were like, there's no collusion involved, because as these Lamar's non-exclusive status became public last week, immediately the Atlanta Falcons said we're not pursuing Lamar Jackson. The Miami Dolphins were not pursuing Lamar Jackson. Well, why not, right? Why not? He's a league MVP. He's one of the 10 guys generously in the NFL right now who are going to change your team, and is a dynamic player, comes to work, does his thing. Why not at least explore it? Why rule it out from the outset? And I think that's where collusion comes in here, right? Because when NFL insiders were refuting it, there's like, they did not all come to decide we're going to screw Lamar Jackson. No, that's not what the definition of collusion is. That's an incredibly high bar, and you're setting it there on purpose, honestly. Owners don't need to come into smoke-filled rooms and say, all right, we're going to go get Lamar Jackson, right? For there to be collusion. There can be an agreement after the Browns made that deal with Watson. Sorry, I just need a sip of water. My voice is getting raspy.
That's okay.
There can be an agreement among the billionaire class that we're not doing that again. And that's collusion, right? It doesn't mean that Lamar Jackson's contract demands are realistic right now. The agreement between billionaires to draw a line in the sand on a fully guaranteed contract after the Deshaun Watson deal is collusion. It's just not Lamar-specific collusion. And that still counts too. So the NFLPA, who's handling these negotiations on behalf of Lamar, has every right to be pissed at that. For all of these teams from the outset to say, we're not even going to explore it. We're not even going to look into it. That, I think, is a really fishy situation. Now, Lamar is being unreasonable in what he's asking for. That's the other side of this. But who knows, right? I mean, Lamar turned down that contract last year. He could be like, all right, I need to figure something out to get a new contract. His situation, his position on his contract could have changed by now. So for the rest of the teams to rule that out, that's where it's incredibly fishy. That's where collusion actually is happening in this instance. And I think it's irrefutable. Even if Lamar's not going to get what he wants, and even if that was really dumb of him to turn down that deal where he would have gotten paid more than Kyler Murray and more than Russell Wilson, for him to be obsessed with getting over the Deshaun Watson hump, like, dude, just take, this is generational wealth. Take the money and run with all that injury guarantee and stuff. And he's not going to get that deal. Again, he's not going to, given the fact that he was injured in December for the last 2 years. I'm sad to see that money essentially be set on fire for him.
And I think you make a great point that collusion, I think, the word gets bandied about and is sort of like given this connotation where it's like, oh, people are being hysterical or people are being like alarmist when they use that word. And I say that both in a context of sports, but also politics, obviously.
Right.
But with that being said, you're absolutely right in the sense that collusion is not only like Blofeld, the Bond villain, stroking his cat, turning around, being like, "I've got you now." It's this grand design that we've always had. Like, it's a chilling effect that can come from certain league events. Like, it could be just as simple as all 31 other owners were like, that Deshaun Watson thing, that's a one-time thing. We're not doing that. We're not.
They did it with Kaepernick.
Right.
It doesn't need to be like sign on the dotted. It's not like Kaepernick. It was even more explicit, but they collude.
But it's not like an email chain where
yes.
it's every owner having the similar interest making the same decision.
Yeah, Kaepernick was more, actually, I shouldn't say that. That was this guy's
blatant,
no
for sure.
Yeah,
and for a political reason more than an economic reason.
This one is more right. This is a we're
not guaranteeing this type of money anymore
to anybody,
let alone Lamar Jackson.
It's not about Lamar personally. Although I will say, I mean, of course, you have to take into consideration there is going to be systemic racism about.
Absolutely.
The Ravens are not that kind of. The Ravens have been a model organization as much as you can be for players and the treatment of players in the NFL for as long as I have been following the sport. It's why I love the way they do business and why I am very skeptical sometimes of Lamar and like the not Lamar, because he doesn't really say anything publicly, but he has like this whole fan base that is saying like the Ravens are treating him badly. I don't think they are. I don't. And Until this point, they haven't been leaking contract details to the media.
I think what might be, if anything, inflaming or exacerbating tensions in negotiations between team and player is that there's no, as we've said before, there's no conduit between team and player. And that's very difficult, especially when there's a lot riding on this. He's a franchise quarterback. He's 25, 26 years old, won an MVP 3 seasons ago. Like, this is not like a pedestrian player negotiating for like a smaller contract.
Yeah.
This is kind of existential for both Lamar and the Ravens. And the fact that there's nobody representing him but himself, the on-field and off-field is indistinguishable. Those conversations are taking place with the same people, and they don't always do that. And I think that's part of where that potential or at least perceived animosity might be coming from people, Lamar supporters, thinking that that's going on. But I think it's because there's no safety net. There's no between team and player
and media. Like, another thing agent does is they call media and they pitch stories like the Ravens are lowballing Lamar, and then that gets that over the finish line.
Right.
Or, like, he's also losing out on, and it truly breaks my heart that has Lamar Jackson gotten a major endorsement deal. Like, I saw he responded to PFT on Twitter about it, saying that they had heard that he lost a major shoe deal, and he was like, LOL, laughing, right? But how would you even know, Lamar? Like, you're handling the football stuff. You have a team, your mom or whoever is dealing with the business side. Like, there's probably a lot of teams that were like, brands, like, I'm not doing business with a guy that doesn't have an agent because it's not easy for us to do business. Part of the expediency of all of this for them is having to, like, a relationship with an agent. Agents have there are multiple quarterbacks who have agents, right? Quarterback agents and agencies. Like, Athletes First is a quarterback's agency. If Lamar just signed with them, they'd have immediate connections right away with a shoe brand, or something like that. And so I'm sad to see this generational talent not cash in on his value, because I truly love Lamar Jackson. Like,
and that's where it mostly stems from. Is like, I'm not even trying to say this to minimize like his desire to represent himself or have it be very close to these deliberations be very close to his, playing it close to the chest and keep it close to his family. Like, to an extent, I can understand that, especially if someone like him is seemingly a little bit more insular and not as inclined to have a larger
seek
circle.
The spotlight.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand
that. I like that about him.
And right. There's nothing to be critical about that in particular. It's more that I worry that the dynamic as it is now is potentially hurting his value.
Yeah.
And making it harder for him to receive more. And also, as you said, there has to be a reason. It is too coincidental, at least in my mind, I'm not trying to be conspiratorial here, to see 6 to 8 teams almost at the same exact time leak that they're out on him.
Yeah.
The Falcons, the Patriots, the Raiders. I don't know if it was the Jets also, but there were a few other teams all essentially in the same time frame saying we're out on Lamar. After the news of the non-exclusive tag being assigned to we're out on Lamar.
And for them to even say that publicly, teams never say we're out on a guy.
Do you need to say that publicly? You could also just not sign him, and we'd also
exploring every option.
Right.
That would be a normal team response.
It's just interesting to think that knowing the particulars, knowing that he wants a guaranteed contract, with the picks involved, the tag being involved, that these teams would say, you know what? A 25-year-old former MVP who's still probably in the prime of his career and one of the most electric athletes on the planet. No, we're good.
Yeah. Right.
We're actually good. We'll go sign Baker Mayfield instead. We'll stay with Desmond Ridder instead.
Just make the call.
Sam Howell, we'll just go with Sam Howell instead.
Yeah. Well,
Sam Ehlinger instead. It's bullshit, frankly. It's bullshit.
It really is. I wonder if he even, like, without a guaranteed contract, plays on that deal. He might do the Le'Veon Bell and sit out, right? On the franchise tag.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's possible. Anything. I think that's the other weird, crazy thing is that anything is still possible now that he's on the non-exclusive tag. And it's just.
I'm really sad that it's gone down this way.
It's. I think the more it progresses without any resolution, the worse it might be.
It's like two sides that I actually really like. Like
right,
the
it's not,
Ravens
I'm
as
actually,
an organization and Lamar Jackson. And I think that they offered him a fair deal, but the league I don't like. Like the rest of the teams I don't like.
I'm curious about what you think about this, and we can obviously move on from this after this. I'm just curious that the Ravens negotiated with Roquan Smith to sign an extension, and he represents himself.
It's so much harder with a quarterback.
I think that must be it, though, because, I mean, obviously, good for Roquan that he got the money that he deserves. He's one of the best, if not maybe the best linebacker in the league.
Yeah.
He deserves that money, but I just think it's interesting that can get negotiated and resolved pretty quickly, and that this has been kind of a open question for months on end now.
Yeah.
From the middle of the season to now, basically.
Well, yeah, and I think Roquan Smith was just a little bit more willing to actually negotiate as opposed to saying this is my demand. And it needs, that's what Lamar's doing. He's just said, nope, line in the sand. And it's an unreasonable line in the sand, so